Let's move next to the Texas Longhorns. They clearly outperformed many people's expectations in 2023. I think a lot of people, self-included. I had a hard time kind of wrapping my head around, man, we are really anointing Texas this year. That was this past year. I had them number 6 in the country in the preseason. I was very apprehensive about having them that high because how many times have we been burned by the Longhorns in the past? But you looked at their roster and you felt, man, it's just they're too talented not to make a run. Well, they make the college football playoff for the first time in program history, and Steve Sarkisian's, I guess his program in general, they're humming right now. Now, they do have to replace some really key pieces, no doubt. But you bring back your quarterback, you bring back your top 2 running backs, you should be in really good shape. CJ Baxter and Jaden Blue, they're going to be really the bell cow. They're the run game. Take some of the pressure off Quinn Ewers. Now, where you have to find the pieces that are going to replace the wide receivers and the tight end, that's a little bit trickier. JT Sanders, I thought was as difficult a matchup at tight end outside of Brock Bowers in the entire country. Well, he's now gone. You also lose the other 3 wide receivers, in Worthy, Whittington, and Adonai Mitchell. Well, the good news is they went to the portal, and they made some really key additions. You go and get Isaiah Bond from Alabama, who I think has a chance to be a number 1 wide receiver for Texas this year. You go and get a tight end from Alabama and Amari Niblack, who is a lot like JT Sanders, not quite the blocker that JT Sanders is. Not that JT Sanders was an elite blocker, but I think he was a little bit more capable than Amari Niblack. But Amari Niblack has great top-end speed, and that, I think, will be a really important piece for Steve Sarkisian as he's kind of moving him around and finding matchups for Niblack. They go and add Matthew Golden from Houston. Don't sleep on this guy. Do not sleep on him. If you look at Matthew Golden's productivity this year, man, there was a lot of really good moments for him at Houston. So that's a guy that I think not enough people are talking about. And then finally, Silas Bolden from Oregon State. Now, Oregon State's offense is going to be ground and pound, 3 yards in the cloud of dust. He was going to get a lot of one-on-ones, but he was very efficient alongside DJ Uiagalelei in that offense. Even though he didn't get the looks that he's probably going to get in this style of attack, he was very effective when they threw it in his direction. The biggest thing that they're going to have to replace, though, is not necessarily the receivers, not a piece or two here along the offensive line. It's really along the defensive front. Losing Byron Murphy and Tavondre Swent and Jalen Ford, their outstanding linebacker, it's going to be difficult to replace those pieces. Really difficult. Now they went to the portal, added Trey Moore from UT San Antonio. They also added Andrew Bakuba from Clemson, who's a safety. 2 really good pieces that'll probably be plug and play as starters. But the defensive tackle position, they're good and they were deep last year, but losing those 2 top-end guys, 1, the Outland Trophy winner, 2, the best interior pass rusher in the entire sport last year, losing those 2 guys will be a difficult piece to replace. You look at their schedule, too, and I am curious. I think Texas is well-equipped to make the jump to the SEC. I do. But I do think that the challenges that they'll have playing an SEC schedule are going to be significant. For instance, you play at Michigan in the non-conference, Colorado State and UTSA and UL Monroe. So that's your non-conference. But instead of, trips to, fill-in-the-blank university, they get Kentucky. Kentucky, I think, is a tough team to play against. You get a Florida team who might not be great, but Florida's a tough team to play against. You're at Arkansas. Remember what happened last time? The Texas Longhorns went to Arkansas. That's a tricky game. That'll be Arkansas's Super Bowl. You know they've had that one circled. Mississippi State's tricky, especially with Jeff Lebby, the new head coach of Mississippi State. He was formerly of Oklahoma. He knows how to attack Pete Kwiatkowski's defense. You get Oklahoma. They're in Dallas. So I think it's a really tricky schedule. I didn't even mention the road trip to Texas A&M there in the finale of the regular season. I think Texas is probably looking at a 10-2, 11-1 type year. I really believe that they're in a really good position. Could they fall to 9-3 potentially because the gauntlet of the SEC is a little bit more intense than the gauntlet they had to run in the Big 12? Sure, that's definitely a possibility. But still, even at 9-3, I would think Texas has a really good chance to get to the 12-team college football playoff, depending on who they beat and how they beat them. So I'm going to put the percentage chance that they make the playoff in 24 at 70%. It's a really high number. But given what Steve Sarkisian's got coming in and the young players that have played pivotal roles for him last year, I think they're well positioned to continue what they established there in 2023.